don't understand the problem that we've had in Northern Ireland. You don't understand the problem that we've had in South Africa. You do not understand the hatred and the retaliation, the retribution and the revenge that has been going on around this globe since time immemorial. Then you don't understand the dynamics, sir.
Well, Mr. Olson, I may not understand, and that's why we've had these hearings, so that you could have a full opportunity to express yourself. Well, we'll pick up your comment about copyrights and about Jews in a few minutes.
No, sir, I believe you're trying to lay at the feet. You're trying to lay at the feet of the militia some culpability as a responsibility. You're trying to make us out to be something that we are not, much like the press has tried to do over this last year. We are not what you think we are. We are not what the press wants to feed to the American people. We are people who are opposed to racism and hatred. We are people who love our government and love the Constitution. It has been the design and the blueprint for governments around this world. We're proud of the United States of America. But the thing that we stand against is corruption. We stand against oppression and tyranny in government. And many of us, are coming to the conclusion that you best represent that corruption and tyranny. There are millions, 40 to 70 million Americans out there on the other side of the Alleghenies, and there is intelligent life west of the Alleghenies, sir. And I believe that you have to talk to those people out there. You're wasting precious time.
If you think I am radical, let me share with you some thoughts from some of the founding fathers. Thomas Jefferson said, "And this country, with its institutions, belong to the people who..." Thomas Jefferson. "And what country can preserve its liberties if its rulers are not warned from time to time that this people preserve the spirit of resistance? Let them take arms. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants."
My name is Aaron Weiss, and I live in the town of Poughkeepsie. I'm a combat veteran of Iraq, and I'm also a law enforcement officer. They said that it took a lot of courage to pass this SAFE Act. Apparently my definition of courage differs from yours. You see, if it was really so courageous a bill and it took so much courage to pass it, then why was it done in the middle of the night when no one could see it or read it? That's not courage. That's a mafia-style sit-down and divvy up what's good for the bosses. Courage is taking the right and true course of action, not the politically expedient one. And anyone who is proud of this law must also be proud of the Patriot Act, the TSA, imprisoning Japanese citizens in World War II, since all these actions were spurred on by emotional fear and rammed through in the name of public safety. Another issue is the insistence of certain people to stand on the graves of dead children and challenge those that disagree to say it to the parents' faces. Well, I, for one, will pick up that gauntlet. First off, why is dead children your battle cry? You didn't say anything about the hundreds of Chicago children being killed, and for some reason you only scream when it happens to wealthy white ones. And yes, I will say to anyone's face, my right is more important than your dead, because I fought for it firsthand. I washed the blood of my friends out of my Humvee, and I picked up their mangled bodies, and I fought day in and day out. I did more things that you people can't imagine. So yeah, my right trumps your dead. I earned it in blood. I gave up a lot for this country, including my youth, and better men than me gave up a whole lot more, so that all you, myself included, could enjoy the rights that are guaranteed to us in our Constitution and Bill of Rights. And we didn't go through all that to come back home and watch the surrender of what we fought for happen based on the demented actions of a couple madmen. So in closing, I would like to address specifically the legislators we all know who are going to vote against this resolution. I understand you will vote against this resolution based on some misguided sense of the public good. However, as a law enforcement officer, I'm curious to know about your true resolve. Since voting to take away someone's rights is totally different than being asked to enforce it, I want you to consider this. If you support the SAFE Act so wholeheartedly, are you willing to stand with law enforcement members and lead from the front to enforcement? And what I mean by that is if a constituent of yours feels so alienated by this law and the manner in which it was passed that they refuse to comply with it, are you willing to stack up on their front door and go in first? I bet if a clause was in this bill that required you, the elected leadership, our elected leaders, to go in the door first, I bet you would not be so steadfast.
Ask yourself now, because sooner or later you're going to come to that line, and when they cross it, what are you going to say? Well, okay, cross this line. Okay, now cross that line. Okay, now cross this line. And pretty soon, you're in a corner. Sooner or later, you've got to draw a line and stand your ground, whether anybody else does or not. That is what liberty is all about.
in the possession
Or
of that
like
individual.
take the firearms first and then go to court, because that's another system, because a lot of times by the time you go to court, it takes so long to go to court to get the due process procedures. I like taking the guns early, like in this crazy man's case that just took place in Florida. He had a lot of firearms. They saw everything. To go to court would have taken a long time. So you could do exactly what you're saying, but take the guns first, go through due process.
But I think the shocker was the president came down on the side of more regulation. I believe he's contradicting what he alluded to in his campaign, and he was endorsed by the NRA, I believe, and all of a sudden he's taking on the NRA, conservatives, the Second Amendment, and it's pretty amazing. I cannot see how this is a strategically beneficial move for him, and I think he's wrong politically and constitutionally to say that this is a reason why we have to have more regulations, because sometimes there are bad things that happen. Matter of fact, bad things seem to happen frequently. But putting this in perspective, this isn't, and it's not like there's an epidemic that we went through, but there's an epidemic of the people who take advantage of this, because when people die, it's very easy to become very emotional and not objective. And when it comes to guns in schools, I think what happens, it really brings out the authoritarian demagogues. Any chance they have to have an answer to a problem with more authoritarianism, more government, less liberty, I think this fits that category.
And there sure were a lot of gasps when he was sitting there. Here's Feinstein on one side, Cornyn from Texas on the other. And he says, you got to get the guns first. Grab the guns first, then we'll worry about due process later. And Feinstein, of course, was giddy. She was giggling. She was thrilled. Cornyn had a pretty stone face, and he's not exactly the most conservative. Now, you could say this was kind of a gaffe. He shot from the hip, his instincts, take the guns first, due process later. But even if it was a shot from the hip, even if it was him thinking outside, his mouth running before his brain was running, it does show something that I think you've said all along, which are his instincts. He has authoritarian instincts.
Yeah, and you know, Senator Ben Sasse brought that up to him. He confronted him. He didn't back down. And of course, he has challenged the president before. But I think his short statement that he made is worth reading, because he was confronting the president right to his face. And this is what Senator Sasse said. He said, quote, "Strong leaders don't automatically agree with the last thing that was said to them. We have the Second Amendment and due process of law for a reason. We're not ditching any constitutional protections simply because the last person the president talked to today doesn't like them."
I am directing the Department of Justice to work in partnership with local, state, and federal agencies, as well as social media companies, to develop tools that can detect mass shooters before they strike.
So this is a lot. We have been begging Trump for 3 years now to rein in these social media companies, and what does he say? He says he wants government and social media to work together to create algorithms so that mass shooters can be identified. So instead of bringing down Facebook, he now wants to make Facebook a part of the government. This is already happening in places like the UK, France, and Germany, where the police will be sent to your home over a social media post.
We must reform our mental health laws to better identify mentally disturbed individuals who may commit acts of violence, and make sure those people not only get treatment, but when necessary, involuntary confinement.
So that second clip is about a minute later in his speech. Trump says he wants to change the laws so that people who may commit an act of violence can be identified and involuntarily committed against their will. Do you have any idea how effing scary that sounds? To me, this shows why Trump was installed over Hillary. Trump supporters didn't even bat an eye over this. But if Hillary or Obama ever talked like this, people would have lost their minds. They would have been on the internet talking about how we're going to be put into FEMA camps. But when Trump says it, we hear that he's just exposing the Democrats or that it's all part of some plan.
Total power in one person's hands, not the American way. These damn bills that come out here all the damn time come out here at the last second, and I got to try to figure out how to vote for my people. How ashamed of you should be. You should be ashamed of yourselves. I'm sick of it. Every year we give power to one person. It was not made that way in the Constitution. He was around when it was written. Now we pass rules that stop each one of us. Enough! I feel like somebody trying to be released from Egypt. Let my people go! My God, they sent me here to vote for them. They sent me here to vote for them, to argue for them. But I'm trapped. I'm trapped by rules that have been forced down our throats. Folks, we live in a democracy, but not here. But not here. So you go back and you tell your people, I'd like to do that, but the speaker has so much power, so much control, and each one of us do it in their districts. And have to go back and say that. And you can say on your side of the aisle, oh, no, that's not the case. But yes, you do. All of us know you got to deal with it. When's it going to stop?
I just can't understand that I don't know how anyone can. 'Cause with the lies today, it gets worse in every way. It's time that we make a stand. It's time that we make a stand. Sit here and wonder why. How many more people gotta die before we're gonna learn? How many gonna burn till we all realize? Until we all realize. See it every day, it never goes away. Never slowing, always growing, never going away. This is the day, you see our way. We've had enough, some things are gonna change. The future's bright, people unite. Better believe you're in for a fight. Behind smiles and pageantry lies a violence and dictatorship. Insidious design, deceitful and sublime, feeding on misery. Feeding on misery. See it every day, it never goes away. Never slowing, always growing, never going away. This is the day, you'll see our way. We've had enough, some things are gonna change. The future's bright, people unite. Better believe you're in for a fight. The world's got a bad disease, and I think I got a fucking remedy. Molotov cocktail, freedom will prevail, a new world society. We're not gonna be ignored. Believe us, this means war. Something you can trust, you should fuck with us. Not gonna take it anymore. We're not gonna take it anymore. See it every day, it never goes away. Never slowing, always growing, never going away. This is the day, you see our way. We've had enough, some things are gonna change. The future's bright, people unite. Better believe you're in for a fight. This is the day, you see our way. We've had enough, some things are gonna change. The future's bright, people unite. Look out, you're in for a fight.
Involuntary confinement. Take the guns first, go through due process second. Involuntary confinement. Take the guns first, go through due process second. Involuntary confinement. Take the guns first, Go
That
through
is
due
the
process.
wolf having its mask taken off. We have a president who wants to take your guns without due process and then wants to drag you out of your home against your will so that you can be committed indefinitely. Let me tell you how this works. Trump was installed to get these kinds of laws passed, knowing full well he would not be challenged on any of it. In the future, when the Democrats take over, they will have the legalized framework to confiscate your firearms and drag you out of your home. If you are on Facebook, you have probably been put in Facebook jail before. Now, Trump wants to have it where instead of being put in Facebook jail, Facebook automatically notifies the government of your activities so that you can be dragged out of your home. I don't know why anybody is still supporting this
Take
man.
the firearms first and then go to court. We have to do something very decisive. Number one, you can take the guns away immediately from people that you can adjudge easily are mentally ill, like this guy. You know, the police saw that he was a problem. They didn't take any guns away. Now, that could have been policing. I think they should have taken them away anyway, whether they had the right or not. A lot of times, by the time you go to court, it takes so long to go to court to get the due process procedures. I like taking the guns early, like in this crazy man's case that just took place in Florida. But take the guns first, go through due process second.